So it's been 19 years since the last mainline Metroid game. I mean, seriously, the last memory I have playing a mainline Metroid game was when my mom dragged me along to do errands because I wasn't quite old enough to be left at home. I distinctly remember sitting in a furniture store on some random chair playing Metroid Fusion on my Toys R Us edition Game Boy Advance. Yeah, I guess that dated me. Well, it's 2021 now, so what took Metroid so long? And more importantly, is Metroid still any good? And I'll be the first to admit that I was not a huge fan of Nintendo's mega push for 2D platformers over 3D titles. Kirby finally getting a proper 3D sequel feels like it's 2 decades late. Just my personal take. So when I saw that we were getting Metroid 5 before Metroid Prime 4, I admittedly had some mixed feelings. On the one hand, I was extremely happy for the 2D Metroid crew. This was long overdue. And on the other hand, I'll admit, I was a bit skeptical at the reveal and really just wanted to see Metroid Prime 4. But I can enthusiastically say, Metroid Dread is a really, really good time. And that good time all starts with Samus and her abilities. Like, literally every Metroid, Samus loses everything at the beginning and is forced to slowly but surely regain those abilities and become more capable in combat as well as more capable in exploration, and such movement and control is critical in a Metroidvania. Without it, searching for new abilities and then using those new abilities just wouldn't be worth it. If Samus gets trash abilities, what's the point of even searching for new ones? And Samus plays like a dream, mostly. Running and gunning at more than 8 angles feels pretty darn good. First time in the series, not counting the Prime games. She can aim in a pretty narrow range while running forward, but you can always freeze her for laser precision, literal laser precision. You shoot a little laser beam out, Resident Evil 4 style. It makes aiming super, super fun. She has a truly dizzying amount of movement options. Dashes, slides, wall jumps. You can honestly forget all of your possibilities in the heat of battle. And this makes for some truly expressive movement. This is like some of the best movement I've seen since Smash Melee. It really is just fun to move around in this game. My one complaint about Samus is the space jump just doesn't feel quite right. Something about the timing. I know it's borrowing from older games, but I don't know, it doesn't feel quite right. Otherwise, Samus just feels fantastic. And you'll be using Samus to move through a truly massive map. And we all know that map design is probably tied with character control in a Metroidvania. I mean, without a map that's fun to explore, what is the point of using all this sexy, cool movement that Samus can do? Well, luckily, Metroid 5 has a few tips up its sleeve to keep things fresh. Actually, it has a lot of things up its sleeve. The first thing is ability teases. Small teases into big teases. You'll start seeing a couple of little morph ball things, for example. You'll see one spot early on, you'll be like, oh, okay, gotta use the morph ball. But that crescendos over time to an unbearable point where you're just itching to get the morph ball. Eventually you have 20 plus instances of the morph ball that you've tagged, either mentally or on the in-game map, and you are just ready for the morph ball. And as you get closer and closer, you see more and more morph ball things, and you know you're getting closer, and that excitement is super cool and can really only be done in a Metroid game where a lot of these abilities are basically defined. There are some new ones, but a lot of them you kind of know what you're getting into. And then there's map trapping. Occasionally, you'll be forced into some linearity. And I think that is a good thing. I think a lot of people might call that out as being not so great, where the game forces you kind of to be trapped. But I think it gives a sense of security for new Metroid players, and I think it's a good change of pace where you're not just aimlessly wandering, but you can tell the game is trying to get you to do a specific thing, and I think it's personally fine, and it's not overdone at all. Next is some map segregation. Mini Metroids and Macro Metroids. The map is broken up like most Metroids, and this idea isn't particularly new, but I think it's done really well in Dread. Basically, there are small maps that make up a bigger map, and sometimes you'll be exploring that small map really intensely. Other times you'll know that you have to go to a different small map, and getting there, navigating there, figuring out the optimal way to get there, and figuring out how to get to that exact spot, or remembering the exact spot that you got to get to is rewarding in itself. So it's almost like two ways of exploring the map. You're exploring it in its one small area, but then you're exploring it in its bigger sense. Next is environmental storytelling. This is done pretty well. I was thinking with Metroid going HD, Metroid not being pixel art, Metroid being on a much bigger screen, that they were going to have to do something with environmental storytelling. And while it's not out of this world, I wouldn't even say it's as good as the Prime games. It's definitely a step up from what we saw on the pixel art games. And yeah, there are some subtle stories to be told through just roaming the map on Metroid Dread. And next, something that is super pushing the marketing is the E.M.M.I. And I talked about this in my kind of first impressions on Dread, but the E.M.M.I basically train you to play fast. They train you to optimize your movement, they train you to optimize your parry, they train you to use abilities, they really force you to optimize the way that you play Metroid. And I think that's kind of where they succeed best. And yeah, I think maybe there are too many E.M.M.Is, but also too few. It's weird. I think they were used about as they didn't overstay their welcome, but they use huge parts of the map. Either way, I think they succeed in what they set out to do, which is to make you a better player. And they kind of put a little twist on the map, because you know that you can be one-hit killed. Even though the one-hit kill doesn't really matter. I've seen a lot of people say that Metroid Dread is really hard, and I think it was the easiest Metroid I've ever played. I probably died more than I've ever died in a Metroid, but you're always sent back to a very respectable area. You're not sent back to the last save spot. There's tons of save spots, tons of refuel spots. You don't have to farm for ammo or health. It really is a pretty forgiving game in that sense, but yeah, you're going to die a lot, and the E.M.M.I being a one-shot kill is definitely going to contribute to that. But back to the map, when you do get stuck, it's super rewarding to just go back and explore for new loot. You know, I mean, there's missile expansions, there's energy tanks, all the classic Metroid stuff, and when you're kind of in a pickle, you're good to just explore and use those abilities and start going towards that 100%, and that in turn makes you stronger and allows you to get through sticky situations easier. TLDR, this map is really fun, and it's probably my favorite Metroid map. That being said, I am not the hugest Metroid fan. I do love me some Metroid, but much more of a Prime guy. And of course, while you're roaming this map, eventually you're going to hit one of the bosses. And I just want to say that these are not just the best bosses in a Metroid game. These are some of the best bosses Nintendo has ever published, bar none. They're engaging, they're challenging, they're varied, and they're ultimately there to make you a better player. They're almost like challenge checkpoints to see if you're truly ready to move on to the next set. And yeah, they're super fun. You will feel defeated at times, but they are worth it once you conquer it. And this all comes together in like a 10-ish hour package to complete the final boss at a first playthrough. And I know that sounds short. A 10-hour 2D platformer for $60, really, in 2021? Yeah, that is short, but there's about 5 extra hours to 100% the game on normal, and between the bosses, the movement, the E.M.M.I, and the completion bonuses, the first playthrough really does feel like prepping you for harder runs, sequence breaking, and speed runs. Almost like an arcade game. Honestly, Metroid feels like it's right on the brink from just becoming some kind of roguelike, where it would really just go absolutely fucking nuts. But there are a few loose ends to tie up in terms of Metroid Dread. First, the music. Not my favorite Metroid game OST. It relies way too heavily on nostalgia for the good stuff. The good stuff is there, but it's all stuff we've heard before. And I can't really think of new tracks that I particularly love. And the art style, well, it grew on me over time. Seeing this world at 60 frames per second and finally seeing an HD Samus being a badass is great, although it has retroactively made me respect the pixel art of old quite a bit more. And the story? Well, it's a Metroid story. We're not playing these games for the story. There are some neat twists and cool cutscenes, but don't be buying this for the story. So Metroid 5. Could it have been on the Wii U? Oh yeah, absolutely. Technological limitations, I don't know what you're talking about, Nintendo. But welcome back, Samus. It's been way too long. I'm damn glad it's here, and I cannot wait for both Metroid 6 and Metroid Prime 4.